Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Timeless Stories. It is so good to have you here. Let us take a breath together. Here is a question for you. You are standing in the center of London. You look up. You see a tall golden tower. Ray? It rises high above the River Thames. It has a clock on 4 sides, and every hour you hear a deep, heavy bell, a sound that echoes across the entire city. What do you call it? Most people say, Big Ben. And you know what? Most people are not completely wrong. But they are not completely right either. Because here is the truth. Big Ben is not the tower. Big Ben is not the clock. Big Ben is the name of a bell hidden deep inside the tower, a bell that has cracked, not once, but twice. And today, on Timeless Stories, we are going to discover the full story. Who built this tower? Why did the bell keep breaking? And who exactly was Big Ben? A politician? A boxer? Or something else entirely? This is also your English listening practice. I use simple, clear words, short sentences, and I speak slowly so you can follow every word. And before we begin, write in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is in your country right now. Now, let's begin. Before we talk about Big Ben, we need to talk about the tower itself. Because this tower has had many names. And that is where the confusion begins. Some people call it Big Ben. Others call it the Clock Tower. Some say St. Stephen's Tower. Others say the Westminster Clock Tower. But the official name, the real legal name, is the Elizabeth Tower. It was given this name in 2012. That year was Queen Elizabeth II's Diamond Jubilee. She had been queen for 60 years. To honor her, the tower was renamed the Elizabeth Tower. Before 2012, the tower had no official name at all. St. Stephen's Tower is a different place. It is the grand entrance to the Parliament building. It was named after St. Stephen's Chapel, an old church that once stood there. But that chapel was destroyed by fire in 1834. So, remember, the tower is the Elizabeth Tower. The bell inside the tower is Big Ben. But most people in the world simply call the whole thing the tower, the clock, the bell, Big Ben. And honestly, that is fine. Everyone knows what you mean. Now, before Big Ben, there was another bell. And this bell had a wonderful name. Old Tom. The Palace of Westminster, the building where Britain's government meets, has a very long history. People have worked there, argued there, and made laws there for centuries. And for centuries, they needed to know the time. The first clock at Westminster was built in the late 1200s. But we have no records of it, no documents, no drawings. It has been lost to history. The first documented Westminster clock appeared in 1367. It was commissioned by King Edward III. He needed money to build it. So he did something clever and a little cruel. There was a judge at the time, a powerful man named Sir Ralph de Hengham. He was caught doing something terrible. He had changed official court records. He had falsified legal documents. King Edward fined him heavily, and he used that money to build the clock. But the king did not stop there. He had an inscription carved onto the clock's face. In Latin, the words said, "Learn justice, be warned," a direct message to every lawmaker who passed by. This early clock was simple. One face, one hand, no minutes, just hours. But it had a bell, a loud, impressive bell, and that made it the first public chiming clock in all of England. The clock and its bell were given a nickname. At first, people called it Edward of Westminster. But over time, a more affectionate name appeared. Old Tom. Old Tom of Westminster. Old Tom served the city for over 300 years. But by the late 1600s, the old clock tower was falling apart. The stone was crumbling. The structure was dangerous. Eventually, it was torn down. But they saved the bell. In 1698, Old Tom was sold to St. Paul's Cathedral for £385 and 17 shillings. A large amount of money at the time, around £54,000 in today's money. Workers loaded Old Tom onto a cart and began the short journey to St. Paul's. But somewhere near Temple Bar, a famous gateway in the old city, disaster struck. The bell fell off the cart. It hit the ground with a tremendous crash. Old Tom was damaged, badly. The workers must have been terrified. They had just dropped one of London's most famous bells. Fortunately, Old Tom was taken to the Whitechapel Bell Foundry. There it was melted down and recast, made new again, and Old Tom still hangs in St. Paul's Cathedral today. You can still hear it, every hour, every 15 minutes. If you visit London, listen carefully. That is history speaking to you. After the old clock tower was destroyed, Westminster had no clock. For over 135 years, people in the area had to rely on sundials. You can still see one of these old sundials today, fixed to the tower of St. Margaret's Church in Parliament Square. Then, on the night of October 16th, 1834, everything changed. A fire broke out in the Palace of Westminster. It was a massive fire, terrifying. The flames spread quickly through the old wooden buildings. People gathered on the streets and bridges of London to watch. The sky turned orange. The Thames reflected the light. By morning, almost the entire Palace of Westminster was gone. Only one part survived: Westminster Hall, an enormous medieval hall with a wooden roof. By some miracle, it was saved. The government faced a choice. They could rebuild quickly and cheaply, or they could build something extraordinary. They chose extraordinary. A competition was opened. Architects from across the country submitted designs. 97 proposals were put forward, and the winner was entry number 64, drawn by a man named Sir Charles Barry. Interestingly, Barry had been born on Bridge Street in Westminster, directly opposite where the Elizabeth Tower now stands, as if fate had chosen him for this exact job. Barry was a brilliant architect. But he needed help with the fine details, the Gothic decorations, the intricate stone carvings, the soaring pointed windows. So he brought in a young genius named Augustus Pugin. At the time, Pugin was only in his early 20s. But he was extraordinary. He designed every interior, every doorknob, every tile, every window frame. Many historians believe Pugin was the true creative mind behind the building. He also designed the clock tower itself. But this project would cost him everything. The work was immense. The pressure was enormous. Year after year, the stress built up inside Pugin like steam in a pipe. In February 1852, Augustus Pugin suffered a complete mental breakdown. He could not speak. He could not recognize his own family. He was taken to Bethlehem Royal Hospital, known then as Bedlam, the building that today houses the Imperial War Museum. He died there on September 14, 1852. He was only 40 years old. Next time you stand outside the Elizabeth Tower and look up at those beautiful stone carvings, remember Augustus Pugin. He gave everything, and the building became his legacy. Now we come to the most dramatic part of this story. Building the clock tower was slow, painful, full of problems. But nothing caused more trouble than the bell itself. The contract to cast the bell was given to a company called John Warner and Sons. They had foundries in London and in northeastern England. The big bell, what would become Big Ben, was cast in Stockton-on-Tees, County Durham, in 1856. It weighed 16 tons. 16 tons of solid metal, a massive, powerful bell. It was called Big Ben from the very start. We will explain why in a moment. The bell was transported to London by boat. But while it was being loaded, it was dropped. The workers checked it carefully. It seemed fine, no cracks, no damage. Big Ben arrived in London, but the clock tower was not yet finished. So the bell was hung on a temporary scaffold near the construction site. Every day, curious Londoners could come and listen to it being tested. For a while, everything seemed perfect, but then the engineers decided. The bell was not loud enough. They wanted more volume, a bigger sound. So they installed a heavier hammer to strike the bell. And on October 17th, 1857, disaster. During one of the tests, Big Ben cracked. Not a small crack, a 4-foot crack. 1.2 meters of damaged metal. The bell was useless. Arguments exploded. Who was responsible? John Warner and Sons blamed the engineers. The engineers blamed the bell makers. Everyone pointed fingers at everyone else. While they argued, Big Ben sat in the construction yard, silent, waiting. Eventually, the Whitechapel Bell Foundry stepped in. The man in charge was George Mears. He offered to recast the bell for no more than £600, about £56,000 in today's money. His offer was accepted. In February 1858, the cracked bell was broken up with an iron wrecking ball. The pieces were carted off to Whitechapel. There, in just 20 minutes, the molten metal was poured into a new mold. Then it took 2 more weeks to cool. On the morning of Friday, May 28, 1858, Big Ben Mark II began its journey to Westminster. It was an event, a celebration. The bell was placed on a large iron truck decorated with flowers and flags. 16 horses pulled it through the streets, and they, too, had flowers in their manes. It took 3.5 hours to travel from Whitechapel to Westminster. Then came the challenge of getting the bell up into the tower. Big Ben was placed in a cradle and hoisted up on an extra strong chain. The process took 32 hours, non-stop. 8 men working in rotating shifts, turning the winch by hand. Finally, the bell was in place. The clock hands, originally painted blue, began moving on May 31st, 1859. The chimes began on July 11th, and then, 2 months later, Big Ben cracked again. Of course, it did. This time, however, the engineers made a decision. The crack was smaller. They could work with it. They rotated the bell so the crack was away from the hammer, and they replaced the heavy hammer with a lighter one. That second crack changed the sound of Big Ben forever. The tone you hear today, that deep, slightly imperfect chime, comes from a cracked bell. A bell with a wound that never fully healed. And yet, in over 160 years since that second crack, it has never spread further. Now, the most interesting question of all. Who was Big Ben named after? In the 18th and 19th centuries, Big Ben was a common nickname in England. It was usually given to large, powerful men with big fists and bigger personalities. There were horses named Big Ben. There were criminals named Big Ben. There were fighters, landlords, and troublemakers, all called Big Ben. But when it comes to the famous Westminster Bell, there are 2 main candidates. The first is Sir Benjamin Hall. Sir Benjamin Hall was born in Wales in 1802. He was a civil engineer who became a politician. By the time the clock tower was being built, he held a very important position: First Commissioner of Works. This meant he was personally responsible for overseeing the bell's creation and installation. He was in charge of the whole project. Sir Benjamin was also very tall. His colleagues joked about his height, and they gave him a nickname, Big Ben. There is also strong written evidence. An article from the South London Journal, dated November 4th, 1856, states clearly that the bell would be called Big Ben in honor of Sir Benjamin Hall, the president of the Board of Works, and his name is engraved on the bell itself. But wait, there is a second candidate, Ben Caunt. Ben Caunt was a famous bare-knuckle boxer. He was born in Nottinghamshire in 1815. At his peak, he stood 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighed 18 stone. A giant of a man, fearless and powerful. His nickname, Big Ben. Ben Caunt was beloved by ordinary Londoners. He won his most famous fight in 1840, defeating his opponent after 101 brutal rounds. His last fight was in September 1857, just weeks before the first Big Ben bell cracked. After boxing, Ben Caunt became a pub landlord. He used his prize money to buy a pub on St. Martin's Lane in Covent Garden, a short walk from Westminster. His pub was a popular gathering place, but tragedy followed him. In 1851, a fire destroyed the pub. His 2 children, Martha and Cornelius, died in the fire. In 1859, his wife Martha also passed away. Ben Caunt died in 1861, aged just 46, a man broken by grief. So who gave the bell its name? Sir Benjamin Hall, the powerful politician, or Big Ben Caunt, the people's champion? The written evidence points to Sir Benjamin Hall. His name is on the bell. The newspaper confirms it. But here is what I believe. Ben Caunt had been famous for decades before the bell was cast. He had made the phrase Big Ben famous across England. Politicians who followed boxing, and many did, would have known his name. They likely started calling their tall colleague, Sir Benjamin Hall, Big Ben, as a joke, a boxer's nickname, given to a politician, then given to a bell, and for everyday Londoners. When those chimes rang out across the city, they probably thought of Ben Caunt, the boxer from Nottinghamshire, the pub landlord down the road, more than they thought of any politician. That is my feeling. But what do you think? Every great story teaches us something, and Big Ben teaches us 5 important things. Lesson 1. Great things are often built on tragedy. Augustus Pugin designed the tower that houses Big Ben. It was the greatest work of his life, and it cost him his life. Behind every beautiful building, every great achievement, there is a human story, often a painful one. Lesson 2. Even the strongest things can crack. Big Ben weighed 16 tons. It was cast from solid metal, and it cracked. Twice. Strength does not protect us from damage. But damage does not always mean the end. Today, the cracked bell has one of the most recognized sounds in the world. Lesson 3. Names carry power. A nickname, Big Ben, traveled from a boxing ring to a politician's office to a church bell tower. Words and names carry history inside them. They connect people across time. Lesson 4. History is layered. Before Big Ben, there was Old Tom. Before Old Tom, there was an even older clock. The present is always built on the past. When you hear those chimes, you are hearing 700 years of history. Lesson 5. Ordinary people make history feel real. Ben Caunt was not a king or a prime minister. He was a large man from Nottinghamshire who loved boxing and ran a pub. But his story, his victories, his losses, the fire that took his children, makes history human. And humanity is what makes us care. Thank you so much for watching Timeless Stories. I hope this story surprised you. I hope you learned something new about one of the world's most famous landmarks, and I want to hear from you. If this story touched you, I would love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, which part of Big Ben's story stayed with you the most? Was it the tragedy of Augustus Pugin, the young genius who gave everything? Or the drama of the cracked bell, broken twice and yet still ringing today? Or the mystery of the name, was Big Ben a politician or a boxer? Write your answer below. I read every comment. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Timeless Stories. Click the bell icon so you never miss a new story. And share this video with someone who loves history or someone who is learning English. This channel is for both. This channel is for both. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next story.